Hi, this is Ben Roberts from the hosting team for the Six Conversations, which is an engagement stream as part of the Now What Global Gathering taking place in April and May 2022. And delighted that you're interested in convening a cohort as part of this conversation process. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who these conversations are for, why you might want to convene a cohort, what's involved for the participants in your cohort, and what's involved for you as the convener. These conversations are about systemic transformation. In the words of Peter Block, the person who created this model more than a dozen years ago, they're about bringing forth a future distinct from the past. There can be other conversations about things like resistance and reform in the context of the present system, business as usual, if you wish. In these conversations, we're focused on what else is possible. Therefore, for existing groups, communities, networks, organizations that have a community associated with them or want to build one, they're also for gathering new groups together. And those groups don't have to be organized around a particular project or initiative or goal, although it's a great way to launch something like that as well, if that's something you're interested in. The key is that there is transformational intent. Why do these conversations? Why is this something that you ought to invest time and energy in and invite others to do? Well, from your perspective, first of all, your main role is to be a convener, to invite others to participate. An invitation is actually one of the six conversations. It's the first one, the only one that has to happen in any particular order. And the idea is that acting in this way, embodying invitation as a way of being, in the words of Peter Block, is itself something powerful to do. Saying to somebody, here's something I really care about, a possibility I'm drawn to, something I can't do on my own. I'd love to have you be a part of this. It's okay if you say no, but really having you be a part of this would add great value. That is a powerful act. It also gives the people who choose to participate, who have said yes to you, a way to connect with each other, that builds social fabric, that builds connection among them, that deepens and strengthens their relationships, whether they know each other already or they're meeting people for the first time. And so that's another valuable act. And it gives them a way to connect that might be quite different from the other ways that you are perhaps convening and facilitating and hosting engagement. So it's a supplement, it's a complement to other ways of gathering, and can add something valuable and different. Finally, coming out of each of these conversations is an opportunity for each participant to harvest from them, to share what struck them about the conversation or some particular declaration of possibility or gift or commitment or key piece of dissent or new invitation that has emerged. And all of that is going to be visualized in a social system map. And those harvest elements will be tagged based on the cohorts people are participating in. So you can see a view just of what's emerging from your cohort as well as across the whole. It's something that people will be able to work with on an ongoing basis. It's not a static artifact. It can continue, it can evolve. It's a way for people to build on what emerges, to respond to it, to react to it, to add new offers and requests and resources, etc. So it's a living asynchronous space for these conversations, for whatever is unleashed by them to continue and grow in the world. Another reason to do this is that you're contributing to the larger field of systemic transformation work, largely because this is an experiment in all kinds of different ways. And so you're helping us to conduct an experiment in how to have a very inclusive gathering that can accommodate people all around the world, even speaking different languages, multiple cohorts, multiple networks, lots of different tools to use. We'll be learning about all of that and learning about how to tie all of those together. And so it's a gift to the field of transformational communities to support this experiment. So what's asked of people who say yes to your invitation? Well, they'll already have had in some form the invitation conversation as a result of your work. The rest is up to us. You're basically done after that. We'll talk more about what your work is and what that invitation looks like in a second. But for them, once they've said yes, it's up to them, unless you want to specify a certain number of conversations, to participate as much as they like. So a single conversation might take us an hour's time. We are hosting 3 calls a week. over the 5 weeks of Now What on one of the conversations other than invitation during each of those weeks. So that's a simple way for people to show up and participate. If they're part of a cohort and they want to be with other cohort members, we'll be creating the breakout groups in order to cluster them together. But it's also going to be fine for them to be in cross-pollinating conversations, just bringing with them the context of your cohort as the reason why they're having the conversation. And there's also a lot of other ways that they can engage at different times, as I said, even in a language of their preference, if they're willing to form groups or you're willing to support the formation of groups for that. And we have a couple of different tools and platforms that can allow those groups to self-facilitate. One called Voice that works with small groups gathered on video, and another called Sutra that is an asynchronous space that can be used for a text-based conversation, but could also be used by a group gathering in person to have the conversation, and just gives them access to the facilitation prompts for each of the conversation. You could even have a model where people on their own use Sutra to get the guidance on the conversation, reflect on it, say taking a walk in nature or something like that, and then come back and engage with a cohort and share some of what they learned. So it's a hybrid kind of approach, if you will, that we're testing out. In any case, lots of different ways for people to participate, with as little as an hour of their time, or they can go much, much deeper if they want. What's involved? There are some requests for them too, if they do participate, and which is also part of the standard model of invitation. And as part of your invitation, you might add to these requests, but let's take a look first at what we are asking of everyone who says yes. This is the homepage for the Now What Global Gathering, nowwhatgathering.com. And from here, you can get to invitations under the Connect tab, the invitations blog. It's also linked to right down here to get to the full blog. And right now, this blog post, the invitation for the 6 conversations, is featured right on the homepage. So this link right here to this particular post is something you can share in your invitations. And it talks a bit about the overall methodology, why people might want to participate, who it's for. It has the link for people to register. There's a general possibility that we are gathering around, which is this idea that a shift towards a culture of restoration might already be well underway, and that these conversations and the idea of community building and the community scale might be a powerful way to engage in that shift and support it. And there's a little message from the hosts, a list of the different ways to participate, some of the options I was just talking about. And then here we have the requests that we are making. So the first is that people register, and it has a link to the Google form that we're using for that. The second is for people to accept that this might be a little bit messy in some cases. It is an experiment. We are prototyping a lot of things. It's not going to be perfectly polished and buttoned down. Although as a team, we have a great deal of collective experience in facilitating the conversations themselves, including on Zoom calls. The third is to make this an advice-free zone. This is a core element of the 6 conversations in general, that we want to avoid trying to help or fix things and leave it to each person to wrestle with the challenges that they are facing. And finally, for the calls that we host, we ask that people come on time. They're only an hour long. We need to move into our process quite efficiently. And once we do, we're in an intimate space where we can't really have people just jumping in and out all the time. The blog post, by the way, also has the call schedule for that series of calls that we will be hosting during Now What, and a link to our calendar so that people can see what those times are in their local time zones. So what are the elements of the invitation? What is your job as a convener? How do you have this invitation conversation to get things going? The essence of it is that there's a possibility you're declaring. There's something relating to a future distinct from the past that is inspiring to you, that you want to gather others around because you can't do it on your own. And so your conversation is essentially to say to people, I would love for you to be a part of this. It's also fine for them to say no. So that's a second element to emphasize that it's a free choice. You don't want to try to certainly mandate that anybody come, even if you had that power, if you're doing this inside an organization, which has been done many times. nor do you want to try to persuade or cajole or pressure people into doing this. You want them to freely choose to do so, even though you're actually asking something of them, a kind of commitment. And that's the third element: declaration of possibility, that it's a free choice, and that there's something that's asked of you, a hurdle, a price, if you will. So I just showed you what we're asking of all participants, but there might be something in addition that you want to ask of them. Perhaps there's a set of agreements that you have for your gatherings, and you want them to accept those. Maybe there's maybe you want to ask them to commit to doing all 6 conversations because you have something you really need to activate. You only want people who are serious about activating it, and you want to use this as a tool to energize that process. That's a beautiful way to use this, not the only way, but something that's perfectly fine for you to ask of your group if you want to. And I should note that Peter Block does say, in order to really tap into transformational potential, a group in some form needs to be having all these conversations. These are core elements he has distilled, if you will, from all kinds of other wisdom around what it takes to bring forth a culture of restoration that's embodied in, that a future distinct from the past based on a culture of restoration needs to have. The other elements of this that you might consider, is the invitation list. Who are you going to invite? And, it's okay to send out an email blast or, post this on social media and have your declaration of possibility there. Any requests you want to make, link to our invitation so people can see the other requests and register. That's good enough. You might want to make this invitation in more personal ways. So a personal email or personal message in some way is much better than that impersonal blast, or could be a supplement in addition to that. Having a conversation with somebody, whether it's live or even in person, if you can, is the gold standard. And again, the invitation act is maybe the most valuable thing you do. And so you can use this, if you want, as a way to really deepen your relationships with others, to say, hey, I'd love to talk with you. I'd love to catch up. I've got this invitation I want to tell you about. I also just want to connect. So it's totally fine if you say no, if this isn't for you, I'm not going to take it personally, but I'd love to talk. And this is a way to use this as a tool, again, to weave social fabric, even if people don't participate. So if you have any questions about this, please reach out to us, info@nowwhatgathering.com, or on our homepage there. You can find a link to our Slack workspace where you can reach us as well. And we'd love to support you, answer your questions, talk about how else you might gather your group besides the regular calls that we're hosting, and encourage you in any way that we can to consider doing this. But of course, it's totally fine for you to say, no, this is too much, it's not for me, or whatever. And on that last thought there, just one thing I want to emphasize is that this may sound like a lot, but really, if you want to just test this out, if you want to see if this is for you and invite a group of people to test it out, it doesn't have to be a big deal, right? You just have a declaration of possibility, you send them the link to our blog post, you encourage them to gather. When they register, we'll list your cohort so that when people come in, they can say, we're part of this group, and you're off and running, and people show up as much as they can. They harvest what they harvest. You can see it. You don't have to be there for any or even all of the conversations, although I think it would be a little odd if you as a convener didn't participate in at least some of them. But it doesn't have to be a heavy lift for you to enter into this space and check it out. So thanks for listening, and hope to see you in one or more of the 6 conversations.